Day One Journey, episode 1465. 1465. By the way, 1365 was 13 times 5, 65. It's 14, so the math doesn't work here. Turn your weakest point into your strongest point. Turn your weaknesses into your strengths. Now, why it's actually helpful? Now, the strategy, what does it mean? Well, I guess we can all fall easily into the perfectionism trap, trying to make everything perfect. Now, trying to make everything perfect, I think there's an underlying assumption that it could be perfect, meaning there's some kind of a 100% which is sort of perfect. And in itself, I think it's misleading and confusing, because there's, you know, when you work on your art, whether it's a song, a dance, a book, you know, like, people will have different opinions, so there's no real perfect, like 100% of it. Now, we do want to get better. We do want to create better products, better outcome, better art, better whatever. So how are we actually doing it? Now, one strategy, in my opinion, is turning the weakest points into your strongest point. Now, I'm thinking, for example, about a choreography, or maybe even a book, or, you know, so let's say a choreography. Now, creating a skeleton is important. This is the beginning here. But once you have something, you have a skeleton, you actually did the work, you sort of have some kind of a show, some kind of a draft. Reading throughout it, now, I think it is important at the beginning to understand the highlights, to understand what are the strongest parts that you want to show, the biggest messages, if it's a public, if it's like a lecture, the big messages. I think it's very important. It's part of a skeleton. But what is the strategy to make everything else better, like everything as a whole better? One strategy, not the single strategy, not the only strategy, but one strategy is this: turn your weakest into your strongest. So you examine what you have, yeah, whether it's you're creating a product or you work on yourself, and you think about the weakest point. Now, the weakest point yet relevant. I think this is a key thing. It's not that we need to optimize everything that we do, yeah? Sometimes we're not good at something and we don't need to get better at it because it's not relevant for other things. There's still, when I think about it, there's still like a goal in mind, yeah? It's not just personal development for the sake of Well, I do want to grow. So for me, there's development for the sake of development, because I want to be in the state of I'm growing, I'm getting better. This is it even goes deeper as my meaning for life. I wanna find out how far I can go. Now, when I talk about turning your weaknesses into your strengths, it's more specific. Yeah, there's some goal in mind. Yeah. So it can be as a communicator, for example. You know, okay. Another point that makes it very helpful is we already, in my opinion, we already have the tendency to work on our strengths. It's easy, it's nice, it's fun, it's nice to do something that we are good at. So we just keep on doing that. And we just get better in our strengths. Now, there's still weaknesses. Again, some weaknesses are irrelevant to what we want. So it's not about going through all the weaknesses. But there's some weaknesses that are relevant. Yeah, this is what I want to focus on. And I want to focus on them until they become the strongest. So instead of thinking, how can I make everything better, just, okay, let's perfect this part. I'm thinking as if it's, like, imagine like a rocky mountain, yeah? And you want the average of everything to be like higher. You go to the weakest point and you make it stronger. You make it stronger, maybe not until it's the strongest, but until it's not the weakest. I think it's something else that is weaker. Yeah. You know what? I'm changing this strategy as I laid it out. It's not turning your weakest into the strongest necessarily. It's turning your weakest, working on your weakest point until it is not your weakest. And then you go to the other one. You always tackle the the weakest part until it doesn't become weaker. And then I think it's a good strategy to get to a balanced improvement. Balanced improvement. I want improvement. I want to grow. I want to get better. So this is the overall thing that I want. I don't think that the goal for me is to be balanced. Yeah. For me, it's like a side effect. Okay, it's a bit more balanced, but sometimes when it's more balanced, it's easier to move forwards. I think about balance like a wheel, and each part of the wheel is like small kind of triangles with a round edge. So each part of this, you can think about a wheel like a cake, and then each piece of the cake is one element, one point, and if they are balanced, it can move faster. So balance can make things more effective, yeah, because there's no there's no very obvious weak point, yeah. So for example, relationships. Last example, relationship, yeah. Let's say we're very good listeners. Yeah, let's say we are very good at communicating things that were important to us. Let's say we know ourselves well, so we are able to articulate ourselves well. Now, this is all communication, relationships, but we have a weak point. Okay, let's say when we get a bit angry or upset or tired, it's like we are on the edge. Then we can trip. Then we can betray the best version of ourselves and try to, we lash out, let's say. So this is a weak point. Where would I start? I can go to a course about communication and, how to articulate things and stuff like that. Well, probably it's better for me to go to anger management or something that is relevant to my weakest point. Because sometimes we are measured by our weakest point. Yeah. So tackling all these super weak points and getting to a good enough level, not necessarily the strongest, I think can be extremely helpful for us in any area of our lives. Because the weakest point, sometimes, if it is relevant, understand, if it's not just about something obscure that we don't do. Yeah, there's so many things I'm not good at in my life. I don't want to get good at them because they are not relevant for what is important to me. But for example, focus skills, communication skills, energy, power, this is relevant for everything. No matter what you do, you need to communicate. No matter what you do, you need energy to do it. No matter what you do, you need to focus yourself towards doing it. So, identify the weakest points, being self-aware, knowing them, yes, identify them, being true to ourselves, saying, yeah, I'm not good at this, but it's important to me. Notice, relevant. I want to get better at. Where do you start? Start with your weaknesses. The relevant weaknesses, yeah, that are standing in your way towards where you want to go. Because these specific weaknesses can ruin everything. If you are the best communicator like ever, and you go on stage and you talk to the audience and you get them on board, you get them engaged and everything, like you're an amazing communicator. When you get back home and you're a little bit tired and your wife or your husband tells you something and just, you just get you a bit annoyed about a specific thing, yeah, and then you lash out, this is where I would start. Because this is your weakest point and it's relevant if your family is important to you, if your relationship and marriage is important to you, if you do that with your children, and your communication with your children is important to you, well, I would start there with your weakest point, with your relevant weakest point that stand between you and where you want to be. You want to be an amazing father, you want to be an amazing husband. In this example, a good idea, in my humble opinion, is to work on your temper, not lashing out on the people that you love the most, even if you had a tough day at your job or something. Yeah. Focus on your weakest relevant points until they're not the weakest point. Then address the next weakest point. And I think it's one of the most effective ways towards overall growth in different areas. Have an amazing day, day one. See you tomorrow.